Well, thank you, Ian, for those kind words. I don't know if I can actually make FMD exciting. That is one challenge I think I might not be able to live up to this afternoon. However, I hope that I'll be able to give you a run through FMD, and hopefully I've tried to target my presentation to make it relevant to you in practice. Because FMD is a very, very wide topic and covers a lot of different subjects, but I've tried to keep it relevant to practice. So, if we don't answer it this afternoon, we can answer it in the FAQs afterwards, so please do watch out for that. First things first, what is a falsified medicine? Because what we think of first is a counterfeit. A counterfeit is a copy. Somebody's faked the medicine, they've copied it, they've tried to make it look like the medicine it should be. I've seen a statistic recently that 1 in 3 medicines in Africa is a counterfeit. It might have active ingredient in it, it might not. But let's be honest, it's actually quite a small problem in the UK. It's quite a small problem in Europe. But what we don't want to have happen is that we become a place that those counterfeit medicines can be used and sold and distributed, particularly in a legitimate supply chain, hence FMD. But it's also a falsified medicine can be any medicine that's left a legitimate supply chain. So that means if it's been stolen, now we've got a way of marking products that have been stolen so that we know that that's happened and we can chase them through the system and we can make sure they're not given to a member of the public. Also, if somebody's destroyed a product, if it's been destroyed as damaged, it shouldn't turn up again. So it's left the legitimate supply chain, so it shouldn't turn up once more. And the last, and I suppose the really obvious thing is, if we've said to the system that we've supplied the product to a patient, then it shouldn't be turned up to be supplied to another patient because it's already been supplied to a patient. And we don't know what any patient ever does with their products. We've all seen bags brought back from people where they've decided not to use a product, whatever, but we don't know where that's been, we don't know what's happened to it. So anything that's left the legitimate supply chain is a falsified medicine. There's also the concept of what's called an introduced medicine. An introduced medicine is where the medicine wasn't intended for the market that it's in. So perhaps brought into the EU simply to be moved on to another country. It might have been intended to go to the Middle East, it might have been intended to go to Africa. But it's not made that step, and what's happened is it's ended up in the EU supply chain. It might be licensed for the EU, but never intended for the EU. It's an introduced medicine. So those are the different types of falsified medicine that we might see. So moving on from the types of falsified medicines, what about this regulation? You might be surprised to learn the regulation's actually been in place since 2011. If you're a pharmaceutical manufacturer, your active pharmaceutical ingredients have been subject to FMD since 2011. It's not a new piece of regulation, it starts to affect us. And when I say us, I mean us practices, wholesalers, pharmacies, all of those places, suddenly it affects us because the last part of the directive, the very last part, is about the addition of the safety features. Now that was enshrined in European law in 2016, the 9th of February 2016, and always you have 3 years to enact the EU law, and guess what? Saturday is 3 years after we enacted it. So we have to be live for FMD, according to the regulation, on the 9th of February 2019. It's on Saturday, it's only a few days' time away. So then I thought it's important, what do we have to do this for? What's it about? Which products have to be used? Which is in scope and which are out of scope? Any product which is a prescription-only medicine is in scope. There are a few very small number of exceptions that I'll come to in a sec, but any medicine, prescription-only medicine, is in scope. The other type of medicine that's in scope is any medicine where there's been a falsification reported already. And actually, as it happens at this minute in time, as we talk, the only medicine that's not a prescription-only medicine in some markets that is subject to the regulations is omeprazole, because there have been some counterfeit omeprazoles found in Germany. Equally important is understanding what's in is actually what's out. What don't we have to do this for? Because what we don't want to be trying to do is trying to do something with a product where it's never going to work because it's not in the system and doesn't need to be in the system. Any medicine which is a pharmacy medicine, so that's any of your over-the-counter products that you see as pharmacy medicines. Any general sales list medicines, so bottles of Gaviscon as an example, don't need to be decommissioned. They will never have a 2D barcode on them. It won't happen because they're not a prescription-only medicine or they're a general sales list medicine. Important too, as we all work in our practices, to try and make sure we understand too about borderline substances. So any products with a borderline substance, so any of your SIP feeds, your ensures and all those types of things, all of those products are not in FMD. They may have a barcode, they may not have a barcode, they may have a 1D barcode, they may have a 2D barcode, but they're not FMD products. Any IV fluids that you give, if you ever were to do those, again, those are not required to be part of FMD. Now, they may be a prescription-only medicine, but they're exempted. Similarly, radioisotopes are exempted as well, just for a bit of completeness. And as we talk right now, medical devices will not be part of FMD. So any medical device, so whether that be a test strip or whether it be a hip implant, any of those types of things will not be subject to FMD. But there's a big however here. Because there's new in vitro device regulations and medical device regulations coming really soon, and those will require serialisation of medical devices. The really good news is they're not going to use the same system as for the medicines. So it'll be something else again, and we don't know the detail of what they're going to do yet, but that's coming as well, just to give a really, really warm feeling of Saturday coming, and about something else coming to follow it along. So, lots of you will have seen this already, and seen this type of thing already, but actually, what is a pack? What are the safety features? We've talked a lot about the safety features. They've got to be added to a product. These are the things that make the product safe, so what are they? There's 3 elements of safety features. The first things first, the one I think we all know about, is the 2D matrix. So this is the code that includes all of the data and information on the pack, and there's a serial number enshrined in that. You may also have seen that we have an anti-tamper device. This is to allow the practitioner, the healthcare professional, the patient to know that the pack has been opened, and it should be obvious to the patient or the person opening the pack whether it's been opened before or not. And that's an anti-tamper device. The details of the anti-tamper device aren't defined in law as long as they're there. There are some standards around the way the standard should be, but the actual detail of it is not defined. And last but not least, is really important, unless the pack is very, very small, every single pack will also have the information in human readable text. So in that human readable text, you'll see a number of things. What you'll see is the GTIN number, that's a product identification number. That says that the box of benzoylflumethiazide is benzoylflumethiazide. It gives the product identification number. You'll also see the expiry date on the pack, in every single pack, which of course is there just now. And you'll see batch number on every single pack. But the next thing you'll see, the thing that's different that you'll see, every single pack will have a unique serial number. So this isn't a serial number for the batch, this isn't a serial number for the product, this is a serial number for every single individual pack will have its own unique number. And all of that data and all of that information is included in the 2D matrix. So the system will be able to pick all of that up and see all of those different numbers as it goes through. So we've seen an FMD pack. I said it was not going to be that interesting, and guess what? There's lots of pictures of packs and things like that coming now. But actually, what is not an FMD pack? So you see here already we talked about a prescription, a pharmacy medicine. So if it's GSL or pharmacy medicine, again, you'll not find a 2D barcode on that pack because it won't have one on. You see, again, a picture of some of the non-medicines. So if it's ACBS, if it's a borderline substance, you won't see a barcode on that pack. Similarly, a good way of spotting a medical device is to look for the CE mark. That's a European standard mark that shows it's a registered product, but it's not a licensed product, it's not a licensed medicine, it's a registered product. So if you see a CE mark, you can immediately stop looking for the 2D barcode for the FMD code because it won't have one there. You may in some products see a QR code. This is the one with the 3 squares round the outside. Again, similar, it looks really like a 2D barcode, it looks really similar, but it isn't. If it's got those squares, it's not FMD. It may have an FMD code somewhere else in the pack just to help us all out, but actually that code there is not the FMD code, and so don't be too surprised if it doesn't scan. And last but not least, Almost every medicine in the market right now has a 1D barcode on it, which identifies a product. But if you look at a 1D barcode, all it does is identify the GTIN number. It doesn't tell you anything else about the product, it just tells you what the GTIN number is. It's a GTIN number, but in a coded way that a machine can read the code. So if you see those, none of those are FMD packs. You might have to look for another code on the pack, but that's not the code to look for. Now, of course, what we've got with FMD is that the manufacturers are not required to have FMD compliant packs until Saturday. So any pack that's made now, this week, may or may not have the safety features applied. Some manufacturers are doing it already. If you look at a lot of the manufactured packs now, you'll start to see the codes there on new packs. Lots of manufacturers haven't. Clearly, there'll be product which has been in market for some considerable time already and will not have these packs on. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them on Monday. It just means they were made before the FMD legislation came into place. So please, the message for me is continue to dispense these packs as you would have before. There's nothing wrong with those packs. They don't have to have an FMD code on them on Monday. Please dispense them as you would before. Please don't worry about that. Of course, if you have any legitimate concerns about that pack as you would have any other time, then of course that would be sensible to investigate that. But just having no FMD compliant markings on it is not a reason enough not to use the pack. It's perfectly safe to use. There will be millions and millions of these in the market. As of this morning, there are 68 million packs uploaded which are FMD compliant. That's from the number from this morning. But at any one time in the UK market, there are about 500 million packs of medicines. So if my maths is right, 1 in 6 or 1 in 7, 1 in 8 packs will have an FMD code on it right now. And those are the ones that have been uploaded. They've probably not even made it from the manufacturer yet. So please don't be surprised that almost all of your packs for quite some time, until these packs go out of date, will not have all of the safety features on. And you see examples here. You see that the product on the left-hand side has no 2D matrix at all. So just the matrix just isn't there. It might have an anti-tamper device. That doesn't make it an FMD pack. It just means it's got an anti-tamper device. Some products right now have an anti-tamper device on. The one in the middle has no serial number. So it's got a 2D matrix code, but it's got no serial number. And the last one in the bottom has no anti-tamper device. None of these products are FMD compliant. The chances are if you scan that barcode, it'll say unknown product, because the product won't have been uploaded to the European website. So please don't worry about using packs which are pre-FMD packs. They're perfectly safe, perfectly acceptable to use, and it may be years and years until we see all of the product washed through the market, particularly with some manufacturers right now because of Brexit preparedness, stockpiling product. Now they're stockpiling product that they made before this went live. So they've made their stockpiles already, and that's a stockpile of product that's made before they go live. So actually what we're going to see is that there's probably quite a lot of stock in market that will not be FMD compliant. Again, it's nothing to worry about. So I thought this is one of the points that I could drift into loads and loads of detail, but I thought without going into loads of detail, if I just give everybody a little view of how FMD works from an IT perspective. What happens is that the manufacturer, you see at the very top of the thing, there's a EMVO, the European Medicines Verification Organisation. The manufacturer, whether it be a branded manufacturer, a generics manufacturer, or a parallel importer, what they do is they send up a list of all their products and all of the GTINs to do with that and all of those other details around the product. And then what happens is that, of course, they make some packs, and each one of those packs has its own serial number attached. Every single serial number is uploaded onto the EMVO system. And then what happens is that each national system, so each country has its own national system. The national system then gets the data down from the European system, and that allows the pharmacists, doctors, wholesalers, hospitals, you name the supply point. Let's all of us do our part of what we have to do to be part of FMD, because every part of supply chain has got different things that they have to do. As a wholesaler, my job's about verifying the product, making sure there have been no reports on that product. As a doctor, as a doctor's practice, we've got to decommission the product because we're giving it to a patient. And just so if you see the name, that you know what it is, SecureMed is the name that's been given to the UK National Medicines Verification Organisation. So SecureMed is a not-for-profit organisation, so there's no money made by SecureMed. It's paid for primarily by the big pharma manufacturers and the parallel importers. But actually, the pharmacy bodies, the generic manufacturer bodies, the ABPI, all of those parts, the HDA, which is the Healthcare Distribution Association, the representative body for wholesalers, all of those are represented on SecureMed board to make sure that it's safe for all parts of the market, that everybody gets their say and is able to make their point and be part of it. So if you see SecureMed, that's the UK's National Medicines Verification Organisation. So down to the nitty-gritty. As a practice, what do you actually have to do? Well, here you are. You've got to verify the authenticity of the product and then decommission it. There are two basic principles in FMD. One is about verification of a product. If you verify it, you're just checking it. You're not changing its status, you're not changing it from one thing to another, you're just checking to make sure the product's okay. There've been no reports about it. And then the next stage, and the thing that dispensing practices will have to do most, and all practices actually have to do most, it's about decommissioning. And what decommission does is says, we've given it to a patient. It's left the legitimate supply chain now because it's with a patient, it's been dispensed. That's the biggest single activity that will happen in dispensing practices as related to FMD. So decommission the product. But for clarity, we have to decommission every single pack. You can't decommission 1 pack of 3, you can't decommission 4 packs of 5. Every single unit, which is FMD compliant, you will have to decommission. There isn't a quick way around, unfortunately. Wholesalers and others have been working on what they call aggregated barcodes that might allow us to decommission more than 1 pack at a time, but it's not here yet. The second thing a dispensing practice has to do is to check that the anti-tamper device on the pack is intact. Because clearly, if the barcode reads okay, that's one good thing. But if the seal's been broken, there's a possibility that something has gone wrong with that pack, that somebody has tampered with the box and has taken out, replaced, all those other things that might happen. So it's important that we check that the anti-tamper device is also intact. And it should be done, according to legislation, at the time of supply to the patient. Now, everybody's interpretation of what time of supply to the patient is something that each practice probably has to decide for themselves, but that's when it should be done, at the time of supply to the patient. There are a few additions that you have to have as well, but just to make sure these are said out as well. You must have systems to decommission split packs at first opening, because clearly if you open a bottle of methadone, say, and you open that, the first open is the time you decommission the pack. And you've also got to have a way of making sure that you know that you've decommissioned that pack. Because the system eventually, if you keep trying to decommission the same pack, will eventually say to you, you've tried to decommission it too many times, because of course there's a potential that that might be a falsified event. There shouldn't be any more than 1 pack in the market with the same barcode on it. So if somebody keeps scanning the same pack, there always becomes that question, actually, is it real or is it not? So you need to have a system in place that you know that when you've decommissioned the pack, when you've broken the pack, you might be doing MDS trays for a patient, all those other things. Every time you open a box, that's when you decommission it. You need to make sure you've got a process to make sure it's done, and also make sure you don't do it again. You also have to be able to decommission products leaving the supply chain. So we all have a time that we stand in a box of tablets, or we drop a bottle of liquid, or all of those other things. Anytime you do that, you need to be able to decommission that pack. So your system will need to be able to decommission the pack and take it out of market and say it's been damaged, it's been destroyed. When marked as destroyed in the system, that means if that barcode ever comes up again and somebody tries to dispense something that alleges that it's the same pack of tablets or the same bottle of liquid, then that won't be able to be dispensed again. It was confirmed, only last week, that the CQC will inspect compliance against FMD. There's been loads of debate about this. I don't know if anybody follows this one, but there's been loads of debate about who would police dispensing doctors and doctors in relation to FMD, but it's been confirmed that the CQC will act in that role, because for wholesalers, we will be regulated by the MHRA. The principal authority for FMD is the MHRA, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. But actually the CQC will have a delegated responsibility to manage that on behalf of the MHRA in doctors' establishments and in hospitals and other places as well. What they have said, though, is that they will have a soft touch approach to this. So this isn't on day one saying, I can't believe that you've not got this in place. What it is on day one is making sure that you're making steps towards compliance. Everybody understands where the market is. And trust me, I see numbers from all over Europe, and all over Europe is in the same place as we are. Lots of people not registered, lots of people are registered, lots of different things that you might see. But the CQC are aware of the situation and aware people have to comply because the law changes. We can't change the law as the law. We can't change the law, but they're aware that it's going to be some time until everybody is fully compliant every time. In fact, most of us won't be able to comply with every pack anyway because the packs won't be FMD compliant. So what I tried to do was to drop this, what I thought was just a little checklist for you, and I've got some slides following this, just taking you through a little bit of detail about each of these parts of this. But say, what would an FMD checklist look to me? And I think if you look on PSUK website, you'll see this already on PSUK website. In part of the FAQs, you'll see some of the details about this as well. Please do look at that website. I think we've tried really hard to give you a really broad view of what FMD is and try and be specific for each sector that we operate in as well. So hopefully we've tried to make sure that there's a dispensing practices bias in what we tell you in the PSUK website. So the first thing you've got to do is to choose a supplier. And I'll talk a little bit more of that in a second, what's important with that. I'd urge everyone to register with SecureMed. It's easy, it's free, it's simple. Why not just do that? It's an easy thing to do. I've said many times, if you've seen me in the press before, I've said many times I think that sometimes we miss the point with FMD and we think the difficult work is in the IT. Actually, guys, the difficult work isn't in the IT at all. The difficult work is actually changing what our process looks like to make our process fit for FMD and to fit that IT change that we've got to do in the middle. So it's a change in our processes because this is something new. We don't commonly scan every product that we dispense just now, and we're going to have to change what we do. So for me, this is the biggest part of it, is actually changing the process. The IT bit is really important. It's not easy, but once it's up, it's running. You've got a piece of IT that will do something, but how do we make all that work in real? What does real look like? We need to think, what do we do with adverse scans? And I've got a whole slide, a couple of slides actually on adverse scans. What in the world do we do when something scans bad? It's awfully easy to design a process where everything works well. If you scan every box and every box goes through, that's simple, it's easy. But life's not going to be that simple. We're going to have products where product doesn't scan, and there's lots of different reasons for that, and something we might talk about later in FAQs a little bit. There's loads of different reasons a product might not scan properly, and what we've got to be prepared for is, what do we do about it? Thinking about SOPs and thinking about training your staff, and I'll cover a couple of slides as we go past with this. So, choosing your IT supplier. Of course, this is in your gift. All I would say to you is that choose carefully with this, and there's fundamentally two options. You can have a system that's integrated with your current systems, so integrated with your dispensing system or your prescribing system, and all of the big suppliers will have a system that works that way. And please have a look at those. The other thing you can have is what's called a standalone system. Now, a standalone system isn't integrated with anything else. Now, for me, there's a benefit in it being integrated because you get to see, and if you have a problem with a product, we know which patient you gave it to. Because that's the benefit of an integrated system. You know which patient you gave it to. So you can pull it back from that patient, decide what to do next as a result of that. If you have a standalone system, the standalone system will know on that day it decommissioned a box of benzoflumethiazide, but it has no relationship as to where that box went to and which patient that went to. But there is an advantage to a standalone system. A standalone system is probably easy. You don't have to worry about the connection to your other systems. You just have a scanner that scans a product. It won't be a scanner, it'll be a smart device really that scans a product, and it'll do that all for you. It might be a bit quicker in terms of actually having it implemented. But okay, for me, it really is important to think about your current processes. And of course, once you've designed your process, it might help you design the IT. Once you've decided which IT you have, it might help you design your processes. But of course, one goes hand in hand with the other. And as I said before, the challenge for me isn't about deciding which IT you have. It's anything, how does your process work behind it? How do we actually deal with these boxes that we've got to do? It's a new thing that we've got to do. I would advise, as I said in the slide here, I'd advise if you haven't chosen an IT supplier, I'd really recommend that you speak to the suppliers that you might want to use. There are loads of places to find advice. If you look on the SecureMed website, they will give you a list of the approved IT suppliers. They'll not tell you which one to choose. There's a very long list. If you notice on the PSUK website, I'm sure we've got a link to that list as well, so you see lots of different places to be able to tell you where the lists of suppliers are. NHS Digital platform has a list of suppliers on it, so there's lots of places to find who these suppliers are. But say first decision is, are we going integrated or are we going standalone? Because if you go integrated, it's quite an easy solution, isn't it? Because your system's already there. Standalone, you've got to think about and choose, because there's lots and lots of different suppliers out there. Think which one fits my business best, which one gives me the best business information as well, which one tells me about how many people have scanned and decommissioned and all those other things. I said before in the checklist, the next part was to register with SecureMed. You've chosen your IT supplier, register with SecureMed. Even if you haven't chosen your NHS, your IT supplier, you can register with SecureMed. My advice would be register with SecureMed. I can't see any reason why not to. It's easy, it's free, and it's relatively simple. What SecureMed do is look at your details, they check your postcode and some other details and do a bona fide check, make sure that you are a practice and that you are legitimately being supplied medicines. They'll check that, and then they'll send you some details, some certification that would allow your IT supplier then to connect to their system. It's easy and it's simple. We've done it for ours, and I promise you it really is. It's the most simple process to do. I don't know who in the room has got a WDA. Has anyone got a WDA? Yeah. If you've got a WDA, you've got to register separately, because that's a different legal entity as far as the system's concerned. So you need to register separately as a wholesale dealer. You could use the same system, but you've got to register those two parts of the system separately. And most IT suppliers will charge you for two separate instances of the same thing. Please do make sure you're doing that, because it's important. I talked before about designing the process. What does this process look like? What is it? And again, we know what we've got to do. We've got to scan and verify and check that anti-tamper device. We've got to do those things. So how does it work? I think, first and foremost, you're thinking, who's actually going to do this? Which member of staff in the practice is going to do this? Who's going to be involved? Is it the member of dispensing staff? Is it the practice manager? Who should do this? In most cases, I think who would handle the stock at the minute is probably the right person to answer that question. But clearly, when we come to training, we have to teach people what to do in case something doesn't go the way we expect it. Training for good is easy. Training for not so good, not so easy. We've also got to think who makes some decisions. And when it comes to adverse scans, it's really important to think, okay, so it's okay for the member of dispensing staff to say, I've scanned this product and it's not right. So I've put it in quarantine, I've put it somewhere safe that won't be given to a patient. Who gets to decide what happens next? Because that's disposition of a product. That's a product which potentially is falsified, and we've got to be really careful when we think about who's able to do those parts of it. So when I say who will do the decommission, but it's also who will deal with all the stages of the process. What's the escalation look like for that situation? Where will you do the decommission? Will you do it at the start of the dispensing process? Where's your scanner? Will you do it at the end of the dispensing process? Will you have an extra scanner at the end of the dispensing process? Because you might need an extra client for your system at the end of the dispensing process. Where about in the process are you actually going to do this? Where does it look like? What's the most efficient place to do it? And it's really thinking about patient safety in this as well, because the more times you cross stock back and forward, the more likely we are to have cross stock. So the danger here is we have a whole system that's designed to prevent harm to patients, and that trying to implement it, we harm patients by making our process too complicated. Simplicity is always key in any dispensing process. Start at the front and work all the way through. If you can make it like that, all the better. But of course, a lot of that depends on the system that you've chosen to use. So I said before, this design of this system and the process is vital to think, where are you going to decommission your stock? Where are you actually going to do this? And the next one sounds like a really strange question. When? Well, I've said before, it has to happen at the time of supply to the patient. If anybody can find a definition across Europe of time of supply to the patient, you'll be doing really well, because there isn't one. But actually what it shows is, it's really important to think, what is that, how close to the patient can I get before I decommission this product? Different systems have different ways of doing it. Some will just decommission as you go along. You'll decommission your product and it'll do that as you go along, as you're dispensing the product. Others will aggregate the code into one code, and then at the end, or just as you hand it to the patient, you can decommission it then. The only problem with that is, can you imagine if you're a patient and you're in your doctor's practice waiting to have your bag of medicines handed to you, and the person who hands it out says, I'm just going to scan this barcode before I give it to you. You scan it and it's got an adverse scan. Sorry, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to have to take this back because one of these packs is, whatever you would want to say to that person, because actually it's got an adverse scan, so we've got to deal with that. So it's really important to think about the when part of it. And I'd recommend doing it late in the process, but not at the very last second. The very last second is a risky place to do that in terms of the patient experience. You wouldn't want to find out something's saying falsified at that very late stage. Next bit is, what in the world are you going to do with an adverse scan? The current advice is that, of course, we'd have to quarantine the product and keep it safe. We need to use the yellow card scheme, which is dreadfully inadequate for reporting a falsified medicine, but that's what the MHRA and the GPHC and the CQC are requiring us to do at this time, is reporting the yellow card scheme. There is a tab on the yellow card online for a falsified medicine. You'll see that that's there already. What you've got to fill in is really unclear. I wish I could tell you that that was sorted and all. They're making a new website, but it's not ready yet to report these incidents on. But you have to decide about the disposition of the product as well. Because actually, you know, if you've dispensed it yesterday and given it to the patient, and the patient's likely to come to harm if you don't dispense it, we've got to decide, do we give it to the patient or do we not? Lots of guidance, all of I'm a pharmacist, and a lot of professional guidance for us, a lot of professional for GPs at the minute on what to do in the event of an adverse scan. Because if you'd have given it to the patient yesterday, you probably should proceed. But of course, you have to proceed with caution depending on what that says. If it says it's a stolen pack, it's a little bit different from it being something that perhaps is saying pack not found. You think carefully about what it is. Think carefully about that disposition of product. And I said before about this escalation process. Who does it go to decide? Who gets to decide what happens next? And I think it's really important to think about that. We've spent loads of time back in Rollins, lots of time back in us as a wholesaler, deciding who decides to do what we do next. Because the pain won't come with the good scans, the pain comes with the bad scans. I think I covered this already, and it really is that the balance of clinical risk versus FMD risk. It could be a falsified medicine. In the first 5 years, it's probably not a falsified medicine. It's probably a medicine that's not been loaded in the system properly, somebody's made an error with, it's just not made it there yet. But we need to decide what that risk is, and somebody has to be able to make that risk decision and decide which way to fall. This comes from the FMD source website. This is the pharmacy organisations got together, and they've got an FMD working group. And much as it pains me to stand in front of dispensing doctor practices and talk about pharmacy, I would commend this website to you. I think of all of the guidance, particularly for people working actual practice, it's easily the best source of information. I've got a link to it at the end of the presentation. It's really good. But this is one of the many good bits of work that they have here. And this shows you the different types of bad scan that you might get. So you might find that it scans and it says it's not an FMD pack. You've managed to scan something that was one of those ones I showed you in the slides before. It's not an FMD pack. In that case, it's not an FMD pack. So make the same decision you would always make with that pack and dispense it. It might tell you it's not scanned it. It might tell you it can't scan it. If you can't scan it, the first thing you do is you remember the human readable code. You can input the human readable code. Each of the IT suppliers has to have a way that you can input human readable code. So you pop in the human readable code. It's a bit of a pest because they're long numbers, but you can do it. Hopefully the product then will be recognised. If it can't be identified at that point, that's when you've got to make that clinical decision. Does the product pass or does it not pass? And I'd say in the early years of FMD, my advice would be the product should pass unless we would have said it wouldn't have passed before. Clearly, if the product is out of date, then that's quite an easy decision to make. And that's a good thing with FMD is it saves us all from ourselves. It saves us from giving people out-of-date stock because it tells you it's out of date. The bad news is it gives you the out of date on the very day it goes out of date. Wouldn't it be much better if it gave you out of date maybe 2 or 3 months ahead, so you were saved from yourself when and if you do destroy something that's out of date and it's not actually out of date, you need to destroy it on the system. It'll tell you about double scans. So I've scanned the product twice, so I've scanned it 2 or 3 times in the same location. Eventually it will warn you about that, because as I said before, what you don't want to have, every pack should have its own number. So if you scan the same pack over and over and over, there is a chance that a counterfeiter's made a load of packs with the same code on it. Actually, I think what's most likely to happen in practice, somebody's got mixed up and not sure whether they scanned the pack or not, so just for safety, scanned it twice. The system will catch that for you. It's not a red card if you've done that, but it will happen and you will get an advice about it. It'll tell you that the product is recalled. So it'll tell you if there's been a recall active on this product. Now, we think as wholesalers this is perhaps a big concern for all of us, because at the minute, most recalls end users don't see. Most recalls are wholesale-only recalls. There's been a minor problem with the pack, a problem with the patient information leaflet, something like that. But we're going to see more recalls, because this is a binary system now. The product's either recalled or it's not recalled. It used to be there were different levels of recall. So it'll be interesting to see how that falls out in the real world and actually whether we see more of that or not. See where there's like a status error, and that's where the pack is stolen, it's already been given as a sample, it's been exported, because if it's exported out of the EU, at the minute, we are in the EU for another few weeks or a few months or a few years, depending what happens in the next few weeks. But an export for a product, for a medicine, is outside of the EU. So going within the EU is not an export in the eyes of medicines law. So if it has been exported outside of the EU, it should be reported, because of course it shouldn't end up back in the legitimate supply chain again. That's where things have gone wrong. This is one of the ones that we need to report that. Use your yellow card to report it. Keep the stock safe so it doesn't go to a patient. You find situations where there's a data error. So the product's not been found on the Secure Med record. It's not found. We can't find it. We don't know where it is. We don't know what's going on. These are the ones we are going to see hundreds, thousands, millions of these. There are loads of packs already in the market which have got the 2D matrix on, but the manufacturer's not required to uplift those numbers until Saturday. So it might be some manufacturers, some have chosen to upload the numbers voluntarily from before Saturday, but quite a few just won't do that. So they'll have the code on, they'll have a number on, but it's going to say not found. It doesn't mean it's a bad product, it just means the code's not been uploaded to Secure Med website. Please don't worry about that. We're going to see thousands of these. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but lots of packs, particularly generic packs right now as well, which have originated in India. India beat Europe to serialization. So products that come in finished outers from India, you'll see have a 2D barcode on them already. The GTIN number will read, and all the data will read, and it'll say pack not found. And again, there are millions of these packs in existence. The MHRA have got an agreement with the Indian authorities that these will stop, but there's millions of them in market already. They're going to come up and say pack not found. Until we get 2 or 3 years into this and everything settles down, we're going to see more packs not found than we are anything else in this system. The next one on the list is already used. And again, the worry for us here is if it's been already used, it's left the supply chain. How in the world does it go back in the supply chain? It's likely that one of the products is a falsified medicine. It could be the first one that was scanned, or it could be the second one that was scanned. Actually, until there's an investigation, we don't know which one of those it actually is, because it could be the second one is a legitimate one, and the first one is a copy. Lots of different reasons that might happen, but watch out for that too. Pack locked, I'll not bore you with that, because actually pack locked is a manufacturer code, and it shouldn't be seen in normal practice, so we'll move on from that. But hopefully what you see here is that I talked about that process before. What do we do in the event of a bad scan? Good scan's easy, isn't it? It's simple, it's easy, it scans, you put it in the bag, everything moves on, patient's happy, practice is happy, everyone's getting paid properly, everything's working well. These are the points we've got to think about. What's the disposition of this stock? What do we do next if this happens? And I say, but if I just reiterate again, the biggest thing we'll see in the start of this by a million miles is pack not found, data not found. The numbers don't correlate with each other. It's an Indian pack, so it doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong with those Indian packs. They've just got a different set of data on that preempted the European Falsified Medicines Directive. I think this is really obvious, but I think it's important to say it as well. I was thinking about SOPs and training. First of all, the first thing is the trick all with the SOP. I end up writing lots of SOPs. I've been part of SOPs that are written. The trick is to work out what you're going to do first. Don't try and write the SOP to make what you're going to do. The first thing is decide what you're going to do. Get a nice little flow, know what you're going to do, and then write that down. Don't try and write it down and then work out that drive what it is that you're going to do. That's not the way it works. Process first, and then write it down. We're going to have to make sure that the clinical and non-clinical staff are trained, because clearly I would imagine that most practices will have non-clinical staff doing decommissioning. It's going to be an expensive thing to do to have a healthcare professional doing this every single time. Certainly in pharmacy, the plans are to have push this down as far as we can. Wholesale, we push that down to our operatives. But then that means you've got to have an escalation way, because what you can't have that person is making a decision about the clinical part of it and what to do next if things don't work quite the way we expect it to. CQC will expect people to understand what the process is and evidence of understanding. Now, some of that is just by having a register of who's read and signed the SOPs. It might be you want to do a little competence check for this as well and actually prove competence. You say, actually, we've actually watched the person do this job, and we know that we can do it, and we've written that down as well. So just as we go by. This, I think, is the biggest question that everybody's asking right now. And I think almost every actor in the FMD scenario is asking the same question right now. Please don't worry if you're thinking, actually, we're not ready. Because actually there are 3,800 sites registered in SecureMed right now, and there are 27,000 connection points that need to be made. So clearly, we've still got quite a gap, and this is on Monday, and we go live on Saturday, allegedly, quite a big gap between where we would like to be and where we actually are. The UK regulators are really aware. A lot of you might not be aware, but SecureMed had a real hiatus because when Brexit first came along, there was a real question about SecureMed's viability, because it cost many £1 million to set it up and to make sure we had funding for it, and that makes it's really, really hard then to have funding for something that might not exist after Brexit. Now, they managed to sort all of that out, but it led to a delay. Now, SecureMed started off way ahead of all of the European European NMVOs, sort of fell behind. In fairness to them, I think we're now back in front again, just to give the impression of where everyone is across the European piece. But the regulators are aware that everybody won't be fully compliant. Let's face it, not all of the manufacturers will be compliant. They're also aware that they've said that they're going to pursue a pragmatic, they keep using the word pragmatic time and time again. We've been promised an updated piece of guidance on this, but they talk about pragmatic, collaborative approach. For me, if you're shown to be doing something, and I don't mean, I think you need to have a little bit more than a piece of paper that says we're going to do something, but if you can prove that you're working towards, I think you're safe in the first 6, 9, 12 months. And they've said in the first 6 months they don't expect any regulatory action to be taken. There might be regulatory advice given, that's a different thing. Advice is different from action, but that's what they've said in the early days. So, but I think what all of us need to do is to be able to prove that we're working towards, and that for me is the challenge. They are intending, and it should go in front of Parliament in the next couple of weeks, they will change the human medicines regulations that will give the sanctions for this as well. So the sanctions will fall in line with other sanctions for dispensing errors and all those other types of things, and for non-compliance with other regulations. So eventually, but what they've said is, of course, you'd have to bear an enforcement notice first. There's lots of steps before you would actually be, in front, in a proper legal position with FMD, as long as you're doing something. That's the big message all the way through is please make sure you're doing something you can show that you're working towards. I thought I'd take the opportunity just to chat briefly about wholesaler returns. We've talked quite a lot about the fact that there's loads of product in market already which will not be FMD compliant. And it won't be for some time because, of course, as we'll have supplies coming to us as wholesaler for years yet that's not FMD compliant. For an actual return, the process of return won't change. There is a change in process for us as wholesalers because, of course, the return is an opportunity for falsified medicines to enter the supply chain because they're not coming from a manufacturer, they're coming from all sorts of different places. If somebody wanted to do something unfortunate, they could do that. Your driver will collect the product, so we've just got a different thing to do. We've got to verify it as it comes in. So we've got to verify it to make sure it's not been decommissioned. Because if it's being decommissioned, we can't do anything with it. So if it's already dispensed, we can't do that. We need to make sure that it's not said that it's stolen. It's all of those other things that might be wrong. And we'll do that in every single pack as it comes back into returns. Quite a big job for us as wholesalers. And remind again, in the early days, the majority of packs will not have the FMD safety features on, and we just can't accept returns, guys, for products where the only reason for return would be that it's not FMD compliant, because actually there's probably no product in market for that product that is FMD compliant as we go through. The really bad news for all of us is the MHRA, or the Department of Health and Social Care, have confirmed that in the event of a no-deal Brexit, that we won't be able to contact the European, do you remember the slides some time ago? We won't be able to contact the European Medicines Verification Organisation, because we won't have those codes come down, because of course that's a European system, and that means for FMD effectively for now will be paused, and the word that they use a lot is paused. The obligations that would be due to come in would be removed, because of course if you actually can't comply with the law, then the law no longer applies. It is impossible to comply with it. However, what they have said is that they will, of course, because what we don't want to be is become the dirty man of Europe for medicines. So it's really, really important that we don't end up in a situation that the UK supply chain is a place where the falsified medicines turn up, because Europe's really tight and we don't. So what they will do, they will introduce a UK system in the event of a no-deal Brexit. But I have to say that's probably going to be a year or 2 years away, because I'm sure if we have a no-deal Brexit, we're likely to be in a position for some time to come that that's not going to be the first thing in our minds is the supply of medicines. Very last piece from me for right now is just to recommend these websites to you. Ian told you before that the PSUK website has loads of information on. We've worked really hard these last few weeks to try and make sure that we're given as much information as we can, try and make it specific for practices and what you have to do. There's lots of FAQs on there. Please have a look at that. Department of Health and Social Care, they have an integrated website. And again, it's really helpful because it's got guidance for all sorts of different sectors. It will signpost you to the NHS Digital website, for example. It will signpost you to the pharmacy website, which is FMD source. It's really good. NHS Digital have an FMD dispensing doctor toolkit. That's there and it's available already. It's not hugely different to what I've shown you this afternoon, but it just helps you to think about what you might see. SecureMed's website is there. Again, SecureMed will tell you, as will NHS Digital, will tell you about which suppliers are authorised FMD IT suppliers. They'll show you all of that type of thing, give you some hints and tips. And last but not least, I have talked about a number of times, the FMD source is a fantastic resource library for dispensing places. Let's not worry too much about whether dispensing practice or a pharmacy, because actually the effect is actually the same, and it's really helpful. So without further ado, that's me finished, and happy to take some questions later on. I hope that I can answer those questions as administrator. I tried to answer as many questions as I could as I went through, but thank you very much for your further attention. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.